Good morning. Chinese President Xi Jinping, he'll be visiting India for the second informal summit with Prime Minister Modi on October 12. What is his likely agenda for the summit? Now, to understand that, we need to go back to the genesis of this summit, which is in the Doklam crisis of 2017. Because after all, it was the Doklam crisis that led to the first informal summit in Wuhan 1 year later. And now this is the return, the second summit where President Xi comes here. So Doklam crisis, the unanimous opinion in India across all spectrums was that it was a victory for us. That Doklam was a victory for us. Actually, it wasn't. Doklam was a blunder. Why do I say that? Because the Chinese do not think the way we think. Because the Chinese always see the big picture. They see the war. The Chinese never see the immediate results. They do not see the battles. They do not look at tactics. So what I intend doing today is, I will introduce a bit about how the Chinese think as I have understood, because this will help us in the second video that I will do on the Doklam crisis and the distance covered from Doklam to Wuhan, so that in the third video before President Xi's visit to India, I'll be talking about the likely agenda. This will be a good way of putting the whole matter in a perspective. So coming back to what I said, that the Chinese look at the big picture. Now take you back in history. In 1986, there was this Somdrongchu crisis between India and China. Now Somdrongchu is a small place in North Kemeng district of Arunachal Pradesh state, which is ours, but the Chinese claim it today. So before I proceed further, there were two major differences in 1986 which are not there any longer. The first was, there was no line of actual control. Now this is important. What we had then was a traditional border, where we had the perception of the border, they had the perception of the border. So while the border was certainly not agreed on the map or decided on the ground, both sides knew where exactly it was. And number two, both sides, the infrastructure was not developed. So mobilization of forces, especially the land forces, would take a long time, which is not the case today as far as the PLA is concerned. So coming back to the crisis, we had a small post where we had a couple of boys. They came down one summer, they vacated the post temporarily. The PLA came, occupied that and refused to go away. Now this was taken as a very serious matter in Delhi, because in a traditional border, a transgression of this nature is an act of war. It is aggression. So the army chief then, General Sundarji, and the Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, they decided that we need to take firm action. So the firm action was build up of forces. The build up of forces started on both sides, continued for a full year. So now by the spring of 1987, the two armies were eyeball to eyeball, ready for the political nod to take the next step. But consider at that time, India was not in a good position. Why? Because General Sundarji had started this crisis here in 1987 spring. I mean, it was staring us in the face. And alongside, he started exercise brass tack on the western front with the Pakistanis. And alongside, what started as the Siachen conflict in April 1984 had actually intensified in 1987 because it was not stabilized. On top of that, our Eastern Army commander, General V.N. Sharma, he publicly asked the chief that how do I take on the tactical nuclear weapons which the Chinese had and we don't. So it was in this situation where it was expected, would the Chinese take the next step? And they did take the next step. But what was the step they took? The Chinese blinked. The Chinese actually offered to diffuse the crisis, and the crisis was diffused. And lo and behold, India declared this as a victory. Subsequent events showed that actually it is the Chinese who won the war. And why do I say that? First of all, the Chinese offer of 1984, which is the last time that they made this offer, of a border resolution, a package resolution, that was off the table. Number two, when Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi visited China in December 1989, and he had that long symbolic handshake, 45 seconds, with the Chinese Vice Premier, Chinese Supremo Deng Xiaoping, and we thought it was a great thing. So as a goodwill gesture on return, it was decided that the plan, India's plan of building infrastructure on the border, will be abandoned. Now this plan was started by Mrs. Indira Gandhi in 1981, when the army chief was General Krishna Rao. It was a 15-year plan where step by step, taking the logistics, the infrastructure, everything together, we were supposed to build up very nice defenses all right till the border. So this was abandoned. So there is a Chinese saying that emotions should not take the place of politics. We did that, but the Chinese did not stop their infrastructure building. They continued with it. We stopped it. Next, what happened was that the Chinese were able to convince Prime Minister Narasimha Rao in 1993 to sign the Peace and Tranquility Treaty. Now, according to this treaty, the entire border for the first time was to be called the line of actual control. And we accepted it because they told us that, look, now we are looking at a sector by sector resolution plan. Basically, what this meant was that now there will be three lines. There will be their border interpretation, there will be our border interpretation, and there will be the line of actual control, which is the military line, which basically means that once the military line is there, any side which has the capability and the political will can transgress it at ease regularly. And this is what the Chinese have been doing, especially after our nuclear tests of 1998. And we, as part of the appeasement policy, have been telling our own people, our politicians, our diplomats, our military leaders have been telling our own people that, look, this is because of different interpretation, so both sides do it. No, they don't. Only the Chinese do it. Indians do not transgress at all, period. So basically, this line of actual control, which was supposed to have brought peace, which everybody today swears that because of this no shot has been fired, it actually has worked to their advantage, because now they put a lot of military coercion on us. Our troops are under a lot of psychological pressure on the border. So this is what I call their victory. Now on top of that, because we said Somdrongchu was a victory, so this whole myth of two-front war, this was actually incubated in 1987 when Sundarji was the chief. And this is exactly the capability plan, which is complete nonsense baloney that has been now resurrected by the present military leadership. So this is the first observation, that the Chinese always focus on the war, the big picture, never on the tactics. My second observation comes from my visit in August 2012 to the Chinese Ministry of National Defense, where at a dinner there was a senior colonel, serving senior colonel of the PLA, who sat next to me. During the course of our conversation, he mentioned to me that since in the age of transparency, openness, the capabilities cannot be hidden, the intentions of the country should never be disclosed. Now this was a profound statement. What he was saying is, keep your intentions under wrap, because you cannot hide your capabilities. I asked him, I said, are you referring to the Weiqi game which is so popular in China? He looked at me sharply and said, "No, no, no, we play Weiqi game and we play chess game also." I later checked up. Of course, hardly anybody in China knows about chess, and Weiqi is the game which from generations to generations their kids, it has been passed on down to the kids. A bit of a digression here to explain what these games are all about, I think is necessary. Now in chess, as we know, chess, the capabilities are known, the players are known, they are put on the board, and this is a game of rules. There are rules that each player will only perform this way, no other way, which is not the case with Weiqi. In Weiqi, you again have a board, you have equal capabilities in terms of marbles. You have black marbles and you have white marbles. But what is entirely different in the Weiqi game is that the player can put his marble anywhere on the board. So it's a game of intelligence, it's a game of intuition, it is a game of patience, it is a game of strategic encirclement. It is how psychologically, by putting your capabilities at various places, you encircle and you compel the other part, your adversary or the other player to give in and accept defeat. So you see, this is precisely the game which these people play. Now you see what we do here in our country. Recently we've had, right from the Prime Minister to the Defence Minister to the External Affairs Minister to all the other minions of this government to the Army Chief, all saying that we will take back POK. So we are disclosing our intention of getting back POK, whereas we don't have the capability. Now this is something that the Chinese don't do. Now my third observation about the Chinese is that the Chinese, they never given to international or outside pressure, whatever is its intensity. They never do that. And why do I say that? I recommend this book written by their Foreign Minister Qi Chen. It's called The 10 Episodes in China's Diplomacy. Here he has devoted one full chapter to Tiananmen Square incidents of June 1989, when within 1 month the Chinese were abandoned by the entire world, where all ties with China, military ties, commercial ties, the various loans which were there in the pipeline from the international institution, they were all stopped. All ties were broken. Yet at that time, the American president, senior President Bush, who understood the importance, the strategic importance of China during the Cold War, he really didn't want to burn all the bridges. So while the American ambassador was recalled from Beijing, he sent his national security advisor on a secret mission to China. Now the whole idea was that once the NSA, American NSA, would go there on the secret mission, meet up with the Chinese leadership, then they could exchange note as to how what sort of things what Beijing wanted, what China wanted, and how the Americans could help them, perhaps behind the closed doors, so that the relations are maintained. Now this is what the Americans expected to happen, but actually what happened was entirely different. The ambassador writes in his book that the moment it was told to them, the Chinese got to know that the NSA, American NSA, is coming, the supreme leader, Deng Xiaoping, he called his entire team and he made it very clear to them, we will not talk specifics with the Americans. All talks will only be done in general terms. And why did he say that? Because there is another Chinese saying, which is that the person who ties the knot shall untie it. As far as the Chinese are concerned, Tiananmen was the internal matter, so it is for the outside powers to now untie the knot. It was none of Chinese mistakes. So you see, when you see this, and you compare with the situation today, there is a trade war going on between China and America. We don't know what shape it will take, but what is certain is that based on trade and commerce, Chinese are not likely to succumb. They will not do that. Neither will they abandon their one belt, one road. So the lesson for India is very simple. The lesson for India in this is that there are a lot of people here who keep talking that, look, we have such a flourishing trade with the Chinese. Why would the Chinese want to forsake that trade? It's nearly touching $100 billion. So we can always compel them to do something. Well, that will not work with the Chinese. So the 3 points that I have made is, number 1, Chinese focus on the big picture. Number 2, Chinese fully understand that the capabilities cannot be hidden, but they will never disclose their intentions. And number 3, global pressure never works on the Chinese. Now, my suggestion is that these 3 observations that I have made in this video be kept in mind when I discuss the Doklam and the road from Doklam to Wuhan in my next video, which will be on the 28th of this month. Until then, thank you and bye-bye.